My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Vernon E. Burge, a retired lifelong farmer in the Mount Vernon, Ivanhoe area in Linn County. Vern, tell us what year and when you were born, or what year and where you were born.
Well, I was born in 1919 on February 19th at the old farm over there on the highway. And it was middle of winter, and what was his name? Dr. T.L. Wolf, I think, was the doctor that came out and was there when I was born.
Mm-hmm. Did you, what was your folks' names?
Harold and Marjorie Burge.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had a sister that's about a year and a half younger than I am.
Yeah. Did this place where you were born, this is on the old military road,
right,
which is now Highway 1.
Yes.
And that goes, the history on that place goes back a long, long ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like how far back, who was the first person, Burge, on that farm place?
Yeah, yeah. And you see, George Burge settled that, or Jeremiah Burge settled that, and his son James settled where Mrs. Warab lives now. Mm-hmm. And I run into an old friend up here the other day talking at Jack Pitlick's funeral. And he was telling me about somebody he had a letter from that tells about way back in the 1800s when he came going north on the military road. He crossed the Ivanhoe River, or crossed the Cedar River. It wasn't the Ivanhoe Bridge, I don't think. And he stayed at Mr. Burge's place. And how wonderful it was. And he says, now where would that be across the river? And I says, it's up here at Mary Warrel's. That's where
what year do you suppose this would have been when Jeremiah first passed through?
When he first came here, he came here in 1837.
1837. Where would he have come from? The Pennsylvania or?
Yes. It's in there someplace. Yeah, I can't.
That's okay, but it was out east.
In the southwest corner of Pennsylvania.
He wasn't an immigrant. He was. Mm-hmm. And where would they have? What direction would they come from? Muscatine? Or?
They came up from Muscatine. He spent a year in Muscatine before he ever come up here. And then he went back to Pennsylvania. He must have made three trips back because it was in '39 he finally brought his family out, and he had this farm over here staked out and a cabin built.
Why don't you show us those two photographs of the old brick house that was on this home place? Hold them up in front of you, and you can explain to us who is that on those.
Well, that's my mother. That's as far as I can go.
Hold it up.
Well, I'm shaking.
And this house was demolished in what year?
Well, sometime while we were down south, I don't know. It's been in the last 15 years.
80s, around the 80s, someplace in there. And what year do you suppose that house was built?
1847.
1847.
46, 47.
It must have been quite a landmark for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Cut that out. Mm-hmm. There is also...
You got them?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. We might as well show this painting here. Take that and hold it up, Vernon, in front of you. This was a painting. This was the homes. This was the farm buildings. Some of the farm buildings around the.
Fellow from Mount Vernon painted that.
And this has been in the Burge name ever since then.
Mm-hmm. No other names. Jeremiah. Well, his son James never had owned this farm because Jeremiah outlived his son.
There was just you and your sister. Did you and your dad? How many acres was he farming there?
There was 240 acres in the farm. And then when I graduated from high school in '37, I started renting extra ground. And I don't know how much I rented in '38, but it was part of the Wolf farm across the river.
When you were growing up on the farm, did your dad expect you to work, and you had certain chores you had to do, and You and your sister both? Or?
I don't know as he expected me to, but I took over running the tractor if I could get him off of it.
When you were young, did he have horses?
Yeah. We lost all our horses in 1938 with sleeping sickness. But my dad had had a tractor before I was born, a Fordson. And tractor and I kind of grew up together. And when he'd open a gate, I'd stand on the clutch. And when he opened the gate, then I'd steer through the gate and push down the clutch and stop again. And I was running that tractor on a disc. I never plowed with it. Couldn't reach the levers behind me, but I disked quite a lot of ground with that old Fordson. And in 1929, he traded it for a 1020 McCormick Deering.
So you never really got stuck doing farming, plowing corn with horses?
Oh, I plowed a lot of corn with horses. We never had a row crop tractor until 38.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I was plowing corn at our place with the neighbor's tractor when they weren't using it. Of course, I went up and plowed for them in the spring, back in the 30s.
Where'd you and your sister go to school?
Over at Cedar Valley.
The country
just
school?
Just north of our place, about short ways, less than a half mile.
How many kids do you suppose were in school at that time?
Well, I was just looking in one of my books the other day of the whole class of when I started. And I can go get that book for you, too, if you want to see it.
Now, this is the some of your classmates at the Cedar Valley School. Would this been all of them that were going to school at that time?
No.
There was more there?
Older ones.
But according to
Well, no, it could have been. It could have been. Because that bunch of boys in that other picture here, they graduated.
Yeah. Well, from left to right, the names that I have here is Helen Pitlick, Pat Walrob, Vernon Burge, Margaret Pitlick, Catherine Walrob, and Jack Pitlick.
Mm-hmm.
And did you and Pat and Jack, did you kind of grow up together in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
You were playmates together? Spend a lot of time down on the Cedar River?
Well, yeah, my mother wouldn't let me go to the Cedar River.
Oh, really?
But I remember one time when my sister and I ran off and went down to Pitlick's, and they took us down to the river, and we got a whipping when we got home because my mother didn't believe in going down to the river. We're going to drown.
Your dad didn't fish?
Nope.
He didn't fish?
Didn't hunt, didn't fish.
Yeah. Then growing up, was your dad a kind of a strict person, that he was kind of a workaholic, or
My dad?
did he believe in having fun too?
Well, I don't know. I can't really say that he worked himself too much. He had a lot of livestock, and he kept doing it. I ain't gonna say anything about my uncle because he was in California.
Did your dad have a hired man to help him with, or
Did he have?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had a hired man most of the time.
did he?
Yeah.
And did he live on the place?
Mm-hmm. Stayed there in the house.
Furnished room and board?
Yeah. Back in those days, or in the 30s, there was, while I was growing up, there was a lot of people who work all winter for their board and room to get a job the next summer for little money.
Mm-hmm. And did he have pretty good luck in keeping the same hired man year after year, or did
No, I usually had a different one every year. One of them ran off one time and stole everything we had, I think. I can remember that.
When you were growing up, Vernon, did you have electricity?
Yes, I can't remember, but it seems to me it was in like 29, 30, wasn't 30. We had electricity, went by over there. And we had that old brick house. I remember Jack Sturdy and a butler wired our house, and that was about the toughest job they ever got into, was wiring that old brick house. But yes, he put electricity in. Some of our neighbors had electricity first, like the Wests, and I don't know about the rest of them, but I know they had it.
Of course, you lived on a main road, too, the old military
Yes.
road, so they probably had electricity sooner than a lot of the other people.
Yeah, the line went right past our place, down to Solon and on to West Branch and like.
And the lumber in the house was probably old native lumber, that hard as nails. That probably
A lot of
made
walnut in it.
a lot of walnut, made it hard to run wires through the house. Did you ever run in water?
No, not until after the war years, 46 or
In
47.
the 40s, yeah.
And I guess I was responsible for getting that too, because my wife and I, and two of our kids that we already had, took our first honeymoon after the war. And we drove clear out the west coast and down the coast and visited the relatives along the way that I had never seen. And all those motels that I stayed in, all had running water and flush stools, I come back and I told Dad, I said, there's no sense, we can't have that too. And we put it in.
Did you, when you were growing up on the farm, was it you and your sister's job to keep the wood box filled and to go out and carry in water from the pump?
We don't show any pictures, but right out the back door of our house and just there facing us south was a wood house. Yes, and we had a big timber. Now we never cut much wood. My granddad always had relatives in town that needed wood, and they also cut wood. So he'd send them to the timber. They'd cut up a lot of wood and get somebody to come in with a saw and saw it all up into wood, and then we all filled our wood house, filled my granddad's house, and they took wood. And we always had plenty of wood.
You
got that thing running?
Your Christmas holidays. Do you remember? Did they stick out in your mind? Christmas.
Have a what?
Christmas when you were a kid. Did they stick out in your mind as a fun time, or?
I remember Christmas, yes, but
There wasn't probably many presents and.
I had a flexible flyer sled. That was one of the, I thought, the best in the neighborhood. And we used to take that into town and slide down the press hill. And I got almost to my uncle's place, go down, and nobody at that time could even think of going that far, but I did.
When you, on Christmas Eve, was it a tradition with you to have oyster soup for?
That come after I was married with my wife's family.
Kind of a tradition.
Yeah.
But you didn't do that,
We had oyster soup, but we didn't have it just for Christmas Eve. It just whenever my mother bought oysters.
Yeah. You were talking about down the Cedar River. You and probably Jack Pitlick, and Pat run around a lot. Did you?
Jack and I was on the river more than Pat.
Mm-hmm.
He and I used to hunt walnuts and sell them and do this and that in their timbers and ours. And Jack Pitlick, I used to go fishing occasionally with Jack and Joe. In fact, that's where I first learned to fish, was carp fishing down here on, what do they call it, Stony Point, or down here.
Stony Point.
And
did you or Jack, either of you, have a horse or a pony to ride?
Both of us, yes. Yeah. Patty wore them too.
Yeah.
Russell boys.
Was it a pony or a horse?
Well, Jack's was a Shetland pony, and the Russells had a Western pony, and I guess mine was just a pony, a little smaller than a horse, and Patty Warren was a white, a little bigger than mine, but I guess it was called a pony too.
I can imagine you boys had a lot of fun.
It was all
Did you ever get into any trouble that you really got to?
No, we were pretty. We didn't do anything out of the way at all. We just had a lot of fun.
Did you ever have to stay after school?
Ever what?
Ever have to stay after school?
Oh my, yes, but I don't know in country school.
Did any of you chew tobacco? Did any of you chew tobacco when you were a kid?
No. None of us. No, I don't know of anybody in our school that ever chewed tobacco, although I do know some that smoked.
Yeah. Did you ever smoke corn silk?
Yeah. Did that.
Wasn't very good, was it?
I wonder if it didn't burn their tongues off.
But as far as neighborhood kids, was it pretty much the Russells and the Walrabs and the Pitlicks? Was that about it as far as in the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm. Now, see, when those pictures were taken there, the Russells lived over across the river on the Wolf Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Then they moved down on the Russell Farm, which was south of our place, and they started the school. But I was probably in 4th or 5th grade before the Russells moved.
Do you remember making ice on the river?
No,
down
I
at
don't.
Ivanhoe?
We had an ice house, but nobody ever made ice during my time. But yes, I remember making ice, and I watched them down on the river, and where they did it, and that's where my family used to make it too, right in there.
What did you do? Have a building on the farm to store it in?
Yeah, we had an ice house. My folks had changed that into a chicken house by the time I come along. And but that was we always called the ice house till we tore it down.
Yeah. But you're not old enough to remember when you had blocks of ice in the summertime.
No.
Okay.
See, I was only 10 years old when the folks put in electricity, and they bought a General Electric refrigerator, and it was one of the first refrigerators in the country. And we went from sour cream to sweet cream. Got a little more money.
How about trapping and hunting? Did you do a lot of that to supply meat for the
Patty
table?
Warb and I used to do a lot of squirrel hunting together, and well, Jack and I did too. But I can't remember that we all three ever went together. But I went with one of them quite often during the season, and of course rabbits. I never had the patience to go out and track a rabbit down, I guess. And then of course we had a corn picker, and I always helped pick corn on Saturday. I had to scoop dead at a Bell City corn picker, single row, mounted on an old 1020 tractor, and my mother drove the team of horses beside it, and I had to shovel the corn.
You didn't have an elevator?
No, not until I got out of school. Then we got one.
How about haying time? Was that one of your favorite times of the year?
Yes, I love to make hay. I used to.
Were you baling or were you putting up loose hay?
We used to buck the hay loaders and wagons and haul hay, and the West and us used to exchange help quite a bit. And
Did you pull it up into the barn or put it on stacks out in the field?
No, we pulled it to the barn,
Okay.
set the fork, sent it up into the barn.
Did you ever get the job of doing the mowing of the hay?
No,
in the hay mower?
I never did. I wanted to be outside in the fresh air, and my dad had a sunstroke when he was a young boy. He would practically pass out when he had to do anything outside when it was a hot day. But he could go in that barn with a shingle roof, hotter than all blazes up there, and just sit there and sweat and mow hay all by himself all day long. I don't know how he ever did that.
Did you used to spread salt on the hay to keep it from heating?
Yes. Baled hay mostly, but I don't know. Yes, I guess we did. I can remember we always put salt on the hay. And
supposedly that was to keep it from overheating and burning the barn down.
I can remember one time, I won't mention any name, but I was probably a freshman in high school, but I was running a wagon loading hay. And we was at the neighbor's, and we had to haul the hay for about 2 miles with a team of horses, from where he had his hay field. Because they owned 80 acres away from here. And anyhow, I'd come in there, and we were sticking our forks, and I could take my load off in about 5 forkfuls. But I guess somebody on the crew that 13 forkfuls, and he still couldn't get it off. So he'd pitch it off, and the grandpa was driving on the fork, and it made him so mad. 13 forkfuls, to pull up and go back, that he came back there and he said, why can't we put on loads? And wanted us to haul that far, put on bigger loads. So I did. I went back to the field and I told the man loading the front end, I said, boy, I got electric because those loads ain't big enough. We'll load him a load, he said. And we did. I set the fork the first time, and it got about this high above the wagon, the hay, and down come the barn.
pull the track.
That point out there, just pulled it right out of there. The guy went off of that wagon pretty fast. And this I know him real well, but he got mad at me. That kid, and the hired man in the barn, the fellow that was farming, renting the farm, lived there, but he worked someplace else. They called him. He came back, and Grandpa was just giving him the dickens. And the hired man in the barn said he told him who was to blame for all this, and that Grandpa didn't like it. And all I did was just went and got a bigger load and set the fork, and the barn come down. The old man turned around and he says, "Well, man, why don't you just put your team," told me, he said, "just put your team in that barn up there and then go down and set the fork a little shallower and put it in that barn there and haul your regular loads," he said. That's all he said. He sure got mad at me, the old man did.
How about shocking and thrashing? That bring back a lot of memories to you.
Oh yeah, I shot goats. Yeah, we used to go out in the hot, back in the 34 in the hot summer. We shot goats at night. Run the binder all day, but a lot of the shocking, Dad and I run the. And I see, just as soon as I got out of high school, in '37, I got a combine, and I started combining. And
when your dad was doing the oats, did he have a tractor on the binder, or did he using horses at that time?
Oh, he always had the Fordson. First he had when I first remember that Fordson tractor on the binder, he had a steering wheel back on the binder and ropes somehow to shift gears, and he drove the tractor from the binder. And as soon as I got big enough, I put a stop to that. I run it. Oh, I love running tractors, always have. Right down to the combines today.
Did your dad have a thrash machine, or
no? Ed Pitlick thrashed for us. And
how big of a machine did he have?
He had a 28-inch Bell City, run by a John Deere D tractor.
And was that big enough you could load it from both sides?
Oh yeah, we pitched from both sides. Yep.
Did you get to haul bundles or spike pitch?
Oh, I sure did.
Yeah.
I started hauling bundles in about 34, 35, and this Ed Petlick, when I bought my combine, well, he says, "I just don't think that's going to work." And he says, "I don't think it," but he says, "I'll sell you seed oats in the spring." Well, the very next year, or maybe that first year, I don't remember, but it was either that year or the next, we had a tremendous amount of rain. And they couldn't get those shocks to dry out, so they, sun was shining, they go out and turn them, and before they dry out, they raining again. Ed Penley came to buy oat seed from me.
How many people how many different farmers would there have been in the thrashing ring at that
There
time?
was Joe Sedlacek, Earl Russell, whoever was renting the Wolf Farm as a rule, and there's somebody else across the river, the Pitlicks, the Russells, the Burges, and the West.
How long, in a normal year, how long would it take you to do everybody's farm if you didn't get a lot of rain?
Less than 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks, then.
Yeah, I remember thrashing for 2 full weeks, unless it got rain.
What farm lady put on the biggest dinners?
Well, I'll tell you, that's why I went thrashing. They were all pretty good. My mother and Mrs. Clarence Russell and Mrs. Joe Sedlacek, they really put meals out. Then Earl, yeah, we got good meals at Earl's too. I can remember when he lived back up in the field there. And
probably a lot of fried chicken in.
Oh yeah.
What was I gonna say? Blizzards. Do any of them stick out in your mind?
The what?
Blizzards.
Well, yes.
Bad snowstorms.
When I was going to high school, in '36, and then in '34, I can remember. Well, in '35 and '36, I went to Lisbon, but I guess I can remember the blizzards of '36 better than that because I stayed at my granddad's house. I had a car, but I stayed at my granddad's place. Gina and I stayed up there and drove to Lisbon. He lived in Mount Vernon. And on Friday nights, I and Jack Pitlick went too, and Jack Pitlick and I would walk home from Mount Vernon, and it was cold, way below zero, colder than all get out. We'd walk home, but I can remember walking over terrible drifts up here at Warrubs, and then I remember when they finally, either 34 or 36, they got the WPA out and shoveled through those things, and you just drive like way above the car, the drift was, but they shoveled through them, and you couldn't meet anybody. If you got there first, you went through.
Yeah. Do you ever recall a blizzard in 1940? They called it the Armistice Day blizzard.
In 1940?
1940, it was known as
Well,
the
I
Armistice
don't
Day
know.
blizzard.
I thought the blizzards before that were colder, and 34 and 36.
Yeah. Well, 40 was the one that come up in the middle of the afternoon.
That you mean the Armistice Day storm?
Armistice Day
Absolutely,
storm.
I remember that. My mother froze her knees trying to get the chickens in the chicken house in the afternoon, and they were out cuddled up in corners, just freezing to death.
Had it been warm
Yes.
up until then? What did it do? It turned extremely cold?
Well, you run around your shirt sleeves in the morning, and it was below zero before supper time. Gee.
Was there a lot of livestock lost at that time?
Yes, tremendous amount. Yeah, I think I told you that. Well, anyhow, we had sows having pigs, and we had a fairly new hog house, but no heat in it. And one of the dad had the sows all in there, but one of them had pigs a little while before he did, and she ran off, and we didn't know where she was. And that storm come up, and all the rest of them lost their pigs in that hog house. It was so cold and wind blowing and just terrible. We lost all of them. And after the storm was all over, we started out looking for that sow and found her in the timber, and 8 or 9 pigs, just doing fine. We don't know how she ever managed it.
Found some place to get out of the wind.
She must have.
Yeah. How about any floods? There was a large flood in 1929.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the fact your mother wouldn't let you near the river. She probably didn't really let you near the river when the river was in flood stage.
Yes, I can remember going down to go as far as Petlick's place, and we couldn't get from there to the bridge even because it was going over the road right there. And I also remember that just before the war, they started to put in a new bridge down here, so they built a road from below our place straight through to the bridge, to where they're building this new bridge. And everybody told them, the neighbors there, that they would put the culvert in the wrong place down there in the Russell farm. And that when that creek come up and come down through the field there, it would flood all that, and it had to get out of there. Well, they said no. Their engineers said it was there. So Russell had 10 acres. Every time we had a flood, till the war was over, they could 10 acres of ground drowned out. And so then they come on, and they had the road built there, but they never paved it or did anything to it till after the war. And then they fixed it and they put in a new culvert.
So after getting through grade school, you went to high school in Mount Vernon?
Mm-hmm. And 1 year in Lisbon, come back and graduated from Mount Vernon.
What year did you graduate from
37.
high school? 37. Were you into sports, Vernon?
The what?
Into sports?
Yeah, I played football.
Did
That's
you?
about all I did in high school.
Did you?
Senior year, I was the manager of the basketball team.
Did you get to go on a lot of road trips?
Oh, at the basketball team I did. Yeah, I went with the football team too.
Yeah.
I played when I was junior and again when I was senior.
When did you get your first car?
Well, I think when I started the high school. My dad bought a 33 Chevrolet sedan, and he had a 27 Chevrolet four-door. And when I started the high school, they started having, which was in the fall of 33, you had to get a driver's license. And I went up there. I didn't drive a car. Just went up in courthouse, and I got my license to drive from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night. Had to be home at 6. Well, I never paid him much attention to that night. But we didn't have many patrolmen on the road anyhow.
Did you, was your dad as far as when and where you could use the car, or was he pretty lenient?
Well, he's pretty lenient to me. I don't know. I'd say that these guys spoiled me when I was young. They let me do a lot of things, but I was doing a lot of work for them too.
This would have been at the tail end of the Depression. Do you remember anything about the Depression, that if it affected your folks, or was everybody poor? Or
Well, no, I always got a nickel when we went to town, and I could buy ice cream, and yes, we were poor. We didn't have anything, and most of the neighbors did too.
Yeah.
And there was even some rumors about some of the neighbors how they were making their money, but nobody paid any attention because they needed it.
Yeah.
And it was just good thing they did.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, like bootlegging and things like that, selling stuff maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was bootlegging quite popular?
Oh, I think so. Yes. Actually, after I got in high school, I heard of several people that did that.
Mm-hmm.
But
when you were in high school, Vernon, did you ever have the opportunity to drink any alcohol or smoke any cigarettes?
no,
Or?
never. That never bothered me.
Yeah. How about cigarettes? Did you?
Well, I can remember before I was in high school with my pony that one time I talked a hired man into buying me a package of Lucky Strikes, and I had that, but I didn't really smoke very much. I think when the neighbor boys come up one time, I smoked one, and they smoked one of them, and then I gave it to somebody else. But I never smoked much until after I got out of high school. I was 19, I think, when I started smoking.
Did your folks? Were your folks aware that you were smoking? Did they have any objections to it, or?
I don't think they were when I was younger. But when I was 19, when I decided it was old enough to smoke, why I just lit a cigarette right in front of them. I rolled a cigarette, I guess, to smoke. And nobody ever said anything.
And what was that story you were telling?
Huh?
Yeah, what was that story you were telling us?
Oh, well, I can't remember now. But, I was going to say that when I was drinking, we were baling hay, and everybody was drinking a beer, and I wouldn't do it. I never drank. But I was thirsty, and they didn't bring any water out, and all the rest of them were drinking a beer. I said, give me one of those, and I drank it, and I guess I drank a little beer the rest of my life.
That was probably the best taste in beer that you ever had in your life.
Yeah, and
after baling or thrashing.
yeah, from
all
baling,
day.
yes. My wife could tell you a story too, but earlier she was working for one of the neighbors, helping take care of their boy. We weren't married yet, a girlfriend, and they wanted to give me a beer. Well, they practically poured that beer down me, and I would not swallow it. No way.
During the Depression, in some time down at Ivanhoe, down along the river down there was a group of brothers called the Hungry Five.
Yeah, Stone Kings.
Stone Kings. Can you tell us about?
Well, I can't tell you much about the Stone Kings. They lived down there, and they were called the Hungry Five, and you'd see them walking to town. And but I don't know. I never paid too much attention, and because there was some. I can also remember people from over across the river one time that they used to go to town in their old buggies when I was smaller. I can remember them, and just watching them go up the road. And they had two horses that sure didn't match, but I think one was big, one was small. But no, I'm sure that some of the neighbors down there at that time probably could have a lot of stories, but we weren't around them any too much.
So you're out of high school now, and So when did you start farming?
1938,
1938.
spring. I rented a farm from Dr. Wolf.
Was that on this side or the other
The other
side of
side
the
of the
sea?
river,
The other
right
side
across.
of the river.
From where John Crow lives now. It was all the Wolf Farm, and John Crow's got all the Wolf Farm now. But this was across the road from his house. They put a renter on there, but he didn't want all of it, the Wolf Farm. So I rented the other part.
So you were just raising a cash crop, or did you have livestock?
On shares, corn and oats, and I can't remember. Like oats, in 38 I combined, so we divided the oats up. And went in there with a corn picker. Dad got a case 2-row picker in the fall of 38, and we used that, pick it.
Did you have any livestock when you first started?
No, I bought some feeder pigs and fed them out, but I think that was the next year.
How many acres was it that you rented to start with?
To start with,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much I farmed, probably 120 or 100, something like that.
Okay.
Then the next year I rented, in 39, I rented a 200-acre farm for my granddad that was across the river. And then I heard that there was a farm that over there, it was called, Clyde Burnett owned it. It was, his wife's farm, I think maybe her name was Dvorak. But they owned it, and he bought it, got a renter in the fall, and had him on that place. And the renter took the boards off the barn and burned in the stove in the house, to keep warm. He'd go out and cut wood, although they had a lot of wood. And I guess Clyde come home, and these cattle were starving, and he was a school teacher. And his brother up there at the pool hall was running the pool hall in Mount Vernon, told me that Clyde kicked his renter out, and he didn't know who he was going to get to farm it. And I said, "What's his address?" And I wrote him a letter and told him I wanted to farm it. So then I rented his farm for a number of years.
So when you bought your combine, was you one of the few people in the neighborhood with a combine?
Yes, I don't think there was any other combine in the neighborhood, although the Vista Shells out north of west of Mount Vernon, they had combines. Alice Chalmers combine. I think maybe I was about the first in the neighborhood to buy a small combine. I had a Woods Brothers. But in 2 years I got rid of that and had a Alice Chalmers too.
Did your dad, did he think that was a wise decision to buy a combine? Or?
I don't know, but he let me have his binder to trade in. He got rid of that.
What type of a tractor, the first tractor did you have then?
I bought a Alice Chalmers WC tractor in 1939, and that's what I pulled.
Did you ever do custom type work for other farmers around there?
Oh my, yes. Half of my spending money in those days come from doing custom work. Yeah, I combined and my dad had an Eagle tractor. Now that was a kind of an unusual tractor, but it was a row crop tractor, and I'd run that, and then I bought my own, and then his tractor broke down in first year of the war, and we couldn't get parts for it. It was an assembled tractor. And I had by that time I got 2 Alice Chalmers tractors, and one of them had to go through the racing board, and which I didn't want to do. I didn't think I could possibly get a tractor. I was looking for a used one, and they got a whole bunch of new ones up in Marion, and the Alice Chalmers dealer says, "Well, Vernon, why don't you get a new one?" I said, "How could I possibly get a new one going through the racing board?" He says, "Well, how do you know you can't?" He filled out all the papers, and we sent them through, and I got a tractor the next Monday.
A new tractor.
The next week, I don't think they had more applications the next week than tractors by any.
Did this combine that you had, did it have just one type of head on it? Or did it have a corn head and a...
No, it was just a grain head.
Just a grain head. That could be used for oats or beans? Or?
Yep. I combine beans and oats both with it, and wheat, some wheat, clover. We used to combine a lot of clover seed.
During World War II, did you have any problem getting fuel to do this custom work?
No. Tires or fuel, either one. Had to go through board. They were rationing fuel to us, but
But it was essential to the war effort, what you were doing, the type of work you were doing. Okay, did you get married along here someplace?
got married south of Lisbon,
No, I mean what year?
1942.
1942? It was right during the war years, isn't it? I'm going to have you hold this picture up here.
In 19...
And did you marry a farm girl?
Yep.
Did you go looking for a farm girl, or?
Well, no, I met Helen at a dance down in Lisbon.
Down at Lisbon,
And,
huh?
I tried to get all my friends to take that good-looking girl out. And they didn't do it. And
You were
so-
too bashful to ask her yourself.
Well, not really, but
Did you
I
have?
had another girl.
You're lucky Helen's upstairs.
Well, she knew it. She knew it.
Did you have a wedding dance?
No, not till we had our 25th. I always wanted to have one, but my folks just didn't believe in that.
So, when was your next move? Your farming. Did you take on more acreage?
Well,
or,
I farmed my granddad's place across the river for a year, even after Dad had it, and then he sold it. And that was after the war years. Clyde Burnett's farm, I quit 2 in there, and I rented 140 off of my granddad's farm at home there, and then I helped Dad, and I did custom work, and then in 47 my dad moved to town, and I took off farming the whole works.
Yeah. And at what time did you come to this present farm that you?
I bought this farm in 57 and moved here in March of 58, 1st of March. And then I farmed both places.
Before we go any further, do you know what land was going per acre when Jeremiah come here? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea, but I think that when they bought this over at when they went to Dubuque and staked out, or they had their ground staked out, and then they had to pay the government for it. But it was like $1 and something an acre, I think. And I know it wasn't over $2, but I see in a lot of my abstracts and this and that, and my granddad sold something to Ely West, and he had a chunk of ground which was quite a few acres, get about $2,500 or maybe $800 or something. You know, you just can't believe that what land's worth today and what they sold for way back there.
So the farm you're on now, the farm you're retired on, you purchased that in 57. And who did you buy it from at that time?
Joey and Evelyn Staceco. And Evelyn's still living in Cedar Rapids, I believe.
Did you know anything about the land? Did you know if it was good land or marginal land or?
Well, I grew up here and with the family, and yes, I knew this was a pretty good farm ground.
So when you started expanding on this farm, did you go into cattle, hogs?
I had a few cattle when I came here, feeder cattle. I had stock cows on the other place over there, but I sold a big bunch of them to help a down payment for this one. And but I had a bunch of feeder cattle that I brought over here and fed them out. But I don't think that I started I raised lots of hogs. Oh, I was raising lots of hogs while I was here, and I built fences out here in the fields and farrowed sows and pigs in the hog house down here, and then hauled them out the field and grew them in the field.
Did you have any cash crops, or did you try to feed up everything you raised?
Well, our cash crops were mostly beans. If we put beans in, why, that was our cash crop. Corn, we fed every bit of it. And
how about fertilizer? When you first bought this farm, was you using fertilizer?
Yes, when I farmed my granddad's hills over across the river, and I was farming that when the war broke out. I started farming those in 39. And the government knew that when once this war was over, they were going to have an awful lot of plants that they were building with a lot of nitrogen. And they wanted to go through I can't remember what they were called. It was the same as the soil conservation today, to kind of go through them and find out farms where if nitrogen would really do the crops much good. So they came out during the war years, and they had an attachment, and I bought an attachment that ran off of my plow and had a wheel that turned on the ground. It would sprinkle fertilizer into the ground from the plow in back of each furrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was back of each furrow, and we were getting all the way from 30 to 45 bushel of corn on good ground, but those hills over there were running about 20 to 25, maybe 30. And this fellow from the soil conservation, and I used to know his name and I can't think of it now, but he came out there and he asked me, he says, would you run an experiment here? Let us run an experiment here for the government on this nitrogen? And they brought fertilizer out and put in my boxes and marked it off. And we shot corn from 25 bushel to 89, I think, just during the war years. So I knew what fertilizer did right before anybody else was using it. And of course we all knew what manure do. That was our main. Clean out the cattle sheds and be sure you get down on the ground.
So I imagine word got around pretty quickly what
nitrogen.
well,
they run it in the paper. Their tests showed that nitrogen. So.
Yeah. Well, this is your farming operation from 1957 on until the time you retired. And what road is this located on?
Spring Creek Road.
Spring Creek Road, just off of Highway 1.
Mm-hmm.
And did we ask you how many acres was on this farm when you?
213.
213 that was on this farm. And this is where all the your children were raised.
No, they were all born over at the other farm.
At the other farm. I think it's a good time to mention your children. Can you remember what years they were born?
Yeah, David was born in 1944, and I don't know if I can tell you the month.
No, that's okay. 44.
Linda was born in 46, and Keith was born in 49, I think.
Were they good helping as farm hands around the farm? Did they?
Yes, David and Keith would run tractors and did their plowed and worked. And,
when they got older, so they could really be a serious help to you, did you expand your acres at that time for that reason? Because you had two hired men.
When Charlie Blinks, he was farming the Hull farm up here, and he was killed in an automobile accident, and I can't remember the year now, but anyhow, we rented the Hull farm then, and I farmed that for a number of years, and then Keith farmed it for the Stoners, then bought it and are farming it now.
At your peak, how many acres were you farming, Vernon, at one time?
Oh, close to 1,000 total.
Close to 1,000
we
acres.
farmed Mulholland Farm for a few years, and of course when they put that up for sale, we thought it was way too high, and
in your peak years, how many hogs do you suppose you raised in any one year?
Well, 1,200. I got 1,201 or two, just over 1,200, 1 year, but I can't remember the year. But it was off of this place here. It was after 57. And
that alone, raising that many hogs, is almost a full-time job.
Yes,
it
was. Yes, it was. I was pretty busy.
And did you have any serious diseases, hog diseases, during any of those years?
Well, 1 year we had some, what they call bloody colitis. I had trouble with that. I don't know what they call that now, but it was an infection in the intestines, but they had by that time, my dad had that when I was young, and I can remember pouring stuff out of a 5-gallon can into the water for drinking water, and then watching them die. And I got mad. I was only 7 or 8 years old, and didn't seem to be helping. And I just, on my own, I thought it wasn't going to hurt nothing. I started doubling the dose, and they started getting better. I was pouring 2 cans in instead of 1. But maybe they'd have got better anyhow. I don't know. I never knew.
Yeah.
But at the time that I got problems down here, we had an antibiotic, and all we had walk around. If you see some hog passing a little blood or something, just give him a shot of that, and next day it was all right. Shot. I can't. Seemed like it was Tylenol, something I don't know. I can't remember what.
Did you try to farrow throughout the year? Or
Yes, every 5 to 6 weeks.
And then probably the
Round
worst
robin.
and the worst times of the year was in the winter time.
Yes. And to this day, I haven't figured out what kept me from burning my hog house down in there, because I had an open heater in the hog house and all closed up, but run that all night. And
Did you spend a lot of hours at night down in the hog house during the winter
yes.
time, babysitting?
Yeah. Probably not as much as I could have, but I'd get up a lot of times and go down at midnight and then come back at 1:30 or 2 and then get down there early the next morning.
Did you find yourself bringing the real sick ones in the house?
Not too many hogs, no. But I sure brought a lot of calves in after I got into the stock cows. And
Did you ever find yourself giving them artificial respiration, blowing in their wet mouths and
no,
trying to get
no,
air into
no,
them?
never did that. But I learned real quick how to save baby calves that were still breathing out in the field, that were just looked like they were practically dead, but they were still breathing.
I guess that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could bring those calves to the house, and the first one, they'd say, you just get your water lukewarm in a tub that women all use to wash clothes in. Fill that with lukewarm water, and set that calf in, hold its head up till it got completely warmed up. And you knew when it was warmed up, because it was coming out of there and it was hungry and it wanted something to eat, as a rule. And no, I guess that wasn't quite right. When that calf got to be where he was nice and warmed up, he wanted to sleep. Well, you tried to feed him, and he choked on it and drowned. But after you get him out of there and dry him off, and leave him lay up by the furnace or on a register or something to keep them nice and warm, they'll go to sleep. Now, they might have been born 12 hours before that, and they would sleep for 2 or 3 hours after they got warmed up. But when they got up from that, that's when they wanted to eat, and they knew how to eat. And you can feed them anything, and they'd eat it. Liquid.
How about sheep? Did you raise any sheep?
Yeah, I had sheep for a few years, but then I got out of that.
Why did you raise sheep? Was there money to be made in it, or you just like to have sheep?
We made money at it, and the way I got started was Wilson Company would go out west and buy these older ewes that were bred, and they'd bring them back here, and then we'd go in and buy a bunch of them. And
let them lamb on you.
Yeah. Then we'd keep we just keep adding to it, and young ones, but I don't know, there was a lot of people that done real good with sheep, but I'd rather have hogs, so I stayed with the hogs.
Did you set, was there any sheep shearers in the neighborhood at that time that come around and shears sheep, or?
There was some from down here around Coon Creek. They sheared my sheep once or twice. Longer beams, I think there was a longer beam from, well, I can't tell you where he lived, in Mount Vernon or Lisbon. But it seemed like that's who we used to get to shear sheep. My dad always had sheep, a few. And
how about chickens and geese?
Yes, we always had chickens, and everything else we just maybe when we got our chickens, or my mother used to have incubators. She could have 300. One incubator held 150, and the other one held 300 eggs. And so we always had a lot of chickens. And they raised hens. Well, they'd take the roosters when they grew up and sell most of them, or eat them. And then the pullets all went to the chicken house.
Was your wife pretty much in charge of the chickens and the geese and the?
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Did she get to keep the egg money? And
well, I can't remember. I think most of it went for groceries, cream money, or when we milked cows for a few years. But egg money went for groceries.
What do you suppose was your best, most profitable years in the hog business? You made your most money.
Well, I suppose I can't tell you what year it was. When I sold 1,200 head, that's probably made the most money there. But
what do you suppose they were selling for 100 back then?
Well, I don't know, but even back there, I was paying $2,200, $2,300 a year federal income tax, and we didn't have nothing like today.
Did most of your hogs go to Wilson's, or did you like have Cudahy or somebody around here? Or
the what?
Your hogs. Sell them to.
Oh, most of them went to Wilson. Yeah, we had a hog buying station in Mount Vernon here, and Wilson hog buyer come out. But I got to the point that evidently my hogs were pretty good, because all I did was call up the trucker up here in town, or I'd see the hog buyer for Wilson Company, and I'd say, well, now when you eat some hogs, I got some. I'm ready, and tell them how many I had. And a lot of times at night, I'd get a call at 6:30 or maybe 7 or 8 o'clock and say, we've got to have some hogs in the morning. Can you get them in here? And I said, I sure can. And I'd call the trucker, and he'd give me a 50 or 60, 75 cent bonus. Well, back in those days, that was pretty good. And that's why I got to sell them that way. I waited till Wilson needed dogs.
Did back then, were they docking you for hogs being overweight, or?
Well, they just had they'd dock you if they were under 200, and if they were over 240, they'd dock you a little all the way. However, there were a lot of times you could go to 300 on a hog and still make money, because for the price, it was the fact that you was gaining weight, you just got more money.
Around in 1967, I have a notation here that you bought the home place.
Yeah, I bought the other place over there. Yeah.
That was the original Burge family.
Mm-hmm. Bought it from my father. In fact, he come out here and sold it to me. That's what.
Did you just pay the going price, what an acre is going, or did he give you a break on
it?
No,
he had a price. It was practically the going price. I don't know. It was about the same price as I paid this place a few years before. The land hadn't changed much, and he come out and he just told me that he says, I don't think I'm going to last too much longer, and he lasted 5 years, but he thought Mother would live quite a bit longer, and he says, no, I don't really want you to pay too much on the principal, or don't even have to pay on the principal, just so Grandma will have that interest to live on. Then, upon her death, you just pay your sister half of what you're buying the farm for.
Made it pretty simple. What was price per acre then?
Oh, $270 to $300 an acre.
Mm-hmm. And now it's worth approximately?
Farm ground right now, the way the paper talks, about $1,800.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
I don't pay much attention to what they're getting for pasture ground. I don't know, but.
How long did people live in the old home place before it was tore down?
Oh, we had different ones in the neighborhood. That one fellow was building a house one time, and from the time he bought his ground until he got ready to house built up, why he lived in it and worked for a construction company. And then I had a hired man there for a few years, and then there was another fella come, and I can't remember his name even. He lived there, he and his wife, and then they got in a big fight, and everybody left. And I guess it was never rented after that.
How old was your dad when he passed away?
81.
Your mother?
93.
So she did live quite a
She
bit
lived
beyond.
a long time after Dad, because he
Beyond
was
your dad.
9 years older than she was.
81 he died
Wow.
of? Did he have any disease that you know of? Or?
No, he died in his sleep. Had a heart attack.
Old
I guess.
age.
But he did. Oh, he had diabetes real bad, and he'd lost a leg. And you know, when you get laid up and you don't exercise, that diabetes can catch you in a hurry.
Yes, it can.
And I got diabetes.
But you can control it.
Well, I don't know. Since I broke my hip, I haven't been getting enough exercise. They got the walker out here. Everybody's starting to look at me now to tell me to get walking.
Was farming all work? Did you ever take any vacations?
Oh my, yes. I probably took more vacations than anybody in the neighborhood.
Well, that's good. That's probably why you're still living in your health at 81.
Yes, well, we never had a honeymoon. We went. I had to get home and haul manure right after the wedding.
Of course.
It was in the spring of the year, and got
Every
the
good
barns cleaned
farmer.
out before we plowed. And then after the war, we had David and Linda, and when I got my new car. Then the next summer we took off and we drove from. We were going 5 weeks and 3 days, I think, or was it 3 weeks and 3 days? We drove clear to the west coast up Portland, Oregon. We had seen Grand Coulee. And I'm one of the few people that ever got to drive a car across Grand Coulee Dam. They had it open to all public. And then after a few scares, why, they closed it. And God went down to all the way to San Diego, I guess. And then we came back through the Grand Canyon and Denver and home.
Did you go all of this way because Helen wanted to go because you were probably anxious to get back home and check on things? Or
Not really. No.
Is that the truth?
No,
You really enjoyed it?
Yes.
it was his father sitting at home doing the chores.
Doing my chores.
Oh,
When are you
okay.
coming home? When are you coming home?
Yeah,
I was milking cows then when we took this trip in 46 or 47. I guess it was 47. And so Dad come out and he was milking the cows, but I had a milking machine. I don't know whether he ever had one or not, but I don't know. I ain't gonna say. I don't think he did.
milked them by hand. Do you remember milking cows by hand?
Oh yeah, but I didn't do it very much. I never liked to milk cows when I was young. I'd go run the tractor out in the field, and when it was time to milk, well, I'd take over the tractor or come home from school and I'd take over, and then they did the chores.
How about entertainment in the neighborhood? What did you do? Did you ever get to see rabbits much
Yeah.
in the early years?
You went
Well,
dancing? That's
Well,
when they had
when I was in high
dance
school, why
land
I'd
in
go to.
Ardmore.
I usually went to a show premiere every week
Did you?
in Cedar Rapids.
No, he's allergic to shows,
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah. And you went to Dance Land and
Oh yeah, yeah,
Armar,
yeah,
Highway Gardens in Stanwood?
yeah.
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 Went to dance land more than any place when I was young. And
Did the neighbors have house parties back then?
oh yes, I don't know if we ever went to much. I can remember going to coon roast, and some of the neighbors had dogs and they hunted coon, or they just got coon, trapped them. I don't know, but anyhow, that's where I got interested in coon, and there were some of our neighbors that could cook coon awful good, and my wife could too. I had there was an older fella in town. He used to come out and help build a hog fence out here in the fields, and he didn't help farm or anything, but he was just an old fence builder, and he was getting old, and he'd done work for my granddad and my dad, and you know, even after he was too old to do much fencing, he'd come out and supervise the job and show me that I was doing it the way it should be done, just to eat coon that my wife cooked.
What did your children end up doing?
Well, David, he got out of school and went to work right quick
He was in the Air Force.
at what?
Air Force.
Well, yeah, but he went to the Army. He got the Air Force. But when he got out of school, he went to work for
Harnish Berger.
or which is Alice Chalmers, I think, at the time. And LaPlante Schultz up there in Cedar Rapids. And he was still there when he was drafted going into the service, so he enlisted in the Air Force rather than be drafted in the Army. And he came home from there, and he went right back to, well, I'll take that back. After he got out of the service, he went to Mason City and took, going to go up there to, what, a 2-year school or something. And anyway,
Vocational school or...
Yeah.
well, anyhow, he went to school for 2 years, or 1 year up there. And then he come back and he went to work at, got a job in Iowa City and fixing refrigerators, because that's what he was doing for this company. But they also, I don't know how he just got switched over into being a pipe fitter and been that ever since.
How about Keith?
Well, Keith, he farmed, but now he works in the school. He figures more money up the school than business farming. He's about right too. And our daughter, she graduated from Cedar Falls, and was teaching school in Marshalltown. Met her husband, and they now live in northern Texas, and she's still teaching school.
Did Linda ever have any desire to farm, or did she help you outside, or was she pretty much helping her mother inside the house?
Well, she didn't help on the farm much because she had 2 brothers, and yeah, they were the one that helped.
Oh, she had jobs in town.
Yeah, she went to work in
Went to
places.
Uh,
And Keith went to school northeast, or what was it? Missouri?
I don't know.
Well, you know. He went to college in Missouri.
Oh, Keith? Yes, yeah. Well, I wasn't going to tell that.
Boy.
He went for 2 years down there and quit.
would you like to have your wife come over and we'll get her in the picture here?
Yeah, I'll just move. You just.
No. She can come over and stand behind you.
I don't need it.
Come on, Helen. What year did you retire from farming, Vernon?
What year did I?
What year did you retire from farming?
Well, I was supposed to retire in '84 at 65. But I pretty well planted a lot of the corn until this past year when I broke my hip last winter.
But officially you retired in '84.
But I've been planting corn every year, but this year since 1938.
So what did you do after retirement? Did you just,
I got started going down to Texas in the wintertime. I went down there to visit one of the neighbors one winter in January, I guess the year after my father died. Or the year my father died. Then afterwards we drove down to Texas to visit some of the neighbors that were down there in Texas. And I thought that was pretty nice down there. And so we spent going down there for 25 years.
Would you like to introduce your wife here? That she probably helped you out many times throughout this farming operation.
I could not. I would have never made it without her. Helen?
Can you get her in there?
She can. Okay.
She was Roy Light's daughter from Lisbon. Roy and Grace Novak. Now I knew Novak because they just lived down the road here. Ever since I was small, the folks they talked about Tony Novak and
Did your folks farm, Helen?
yes, they were farmers.
So you were a farm girl, and farming was nothing new to you. So
No.
you just fit right
But
in.
I didn't help much at home.
You didn't. You
Dad farmed with horses too, and I didn't like.
did you have any brothers?
Yeah, one brother.
One brother.
Mhm.
Yeah. You just was not a. One
Well,
who wanted-
I guess women didn't go out and help like they did now.
In your growing up as a young girl, did your mother teach you how to cook and a lot of good Czech recipes? And
Oh yeah, kolaches.
do you still make kolaches
Yeah.
today?
Sure.
And she's got 2 other sisters in the neighborhood too.
You didn't make any for Ellen and I, probably.
Today? No, I didn't.
Tell us about your grandchildren. How many grandchildren you got?
See? You get me all, I don't know.
Flustered.
Yeah.
How many does Dave have?
Dave didn't have any children, but his wife had 3.
Okay.
And he accepted the family. They were grown up, so they had left home, all but the youngest one. And so she still kind of thinks that David's dad. And Linda has 2, and they're both married, and both have babies. And then Keith has four boys that we keep watch over them, watching wrestling and sports.
Do any of them show any interest in farming?
Yes, one, Guthrie.
Do you think he may?
He wants to farm awful bad, and I'm not too sure that they should. I don't know. It isn't going to run this bad forever. But
That's quite a decision to, in this day and age, whether farming is the way to go.
And
or
he
not.
has 4 years of college yet, and he plans on going. He's straight A's.
But he's already got a starting a Angus business. He's got a few cows, and I guess he wants to get a few more this spring.
Will you find yourself encouraging him?
Yeah, what?
Will you encourage him to farm?
Well, I wouldn't discourage him,
Yeah.
because I like to farm, and although it's pretty rough right now for a young man to start.
You talked about that home place, and Jeremiah bought that in 1938. You're talking about a century farm. That would make that 164 years. It's been in
I think the
Burge.
records in Cedar Rapids showed 163. They don't have any record of Jeremiah being here in 38. Now, we've got all kinds of stories in there, and in our family history there, some of his daughters wrote about her dad and what he did, and when he came out here. But Keith was starting to check here a few years ago about the family, back in the 1830s, and he showed that found that Jeremiah was registered down in Muscatine. I'm not too sure that was even called Muscatine then, but anyhow, that's where it was at. And he and his son came up here and built a log cabin, staked out 160 acres, and then he brought his family out the next year, and the farm was in Linn County, so that's when they show him coming here. It was 39.
Yeah. So if your grandson decides not to farm, then it would probably leave the Burge name, the homestead.
Yeah, it probably would. And
Helen, of all the different jobs and things you did around the farm, is there any of them you detested doing?
Oh, I don't know. They had to be done, so you do them.
What did you like most about farm life?
Get out on the tractor and go.
Wide open spaces.
Yeah.
Did you like to work outside?
Yeah, it was all right. But then I had to come in the house and do the housework then too.
yeah, I sent her to the house a half hour early so she'd be sure and have good dinner ready. But back in days when we had Mary Warb up here on the corner. She used to run a tractor. She with Milo out there, did lots and lots of work, and on driving tractor in the field. And there was another. I think your sister even helped Jack farm.
Well, not only farm but raise hogs.
Oh yeah, she's a good hog raiser.
You just almost figure on, even though you did have to do the housework, helping outside didn't.
Well, he needed the help, and I didn't mind driving a tractor on a disc or a soil finisher or harrow or something. Because a lot of times I'd lose my harrow one time out in the field.
Well, one time it was coming up over the wheel.
Did
No,
you
that was the disc.
Oh,
did you ever do something dumb and get chewed out by Vernon?
Well, at that time when I lost the harrow, don't you ever look back? But we just turned around and hooked it up again. I guess he usually comes out and help me hook up or something. And when we was first married, we were working across the creek.
yeah. I still farm those hills across the river,
Oh, okay.
and I had an Allis-Chalmers tractor, and I don't. Did we have an elevator over there unloading corn? Because you didn't shovel corn, but you
No,
were hauling corn in,
Grandpa was unloading.
and she had a pretty steep sand hill to go up from across the creek and then up that sand hill, and she got the tractor got to spinning in that sand and just dug a hole. Well, fortunately it did, because I don't think it could have held that load of corn there, on there until we got more tractors there to help get it out of there. But it made its own breaks in the hole.
And then we walked back to the field to get you, and you come up and he can back it down, back the whole thing out of there, and then take a run for it and get up the bank again. And so then I hopped on it and went the rest of the way.
If you ever if you had your life to live over, Vernon, would you done anything different? Went any bigger, smaller, or would you?
Well, I thought about that a lot of times, but I don't really think I would have. I guess as we went, the time I was growing up, from the 50s to the 80s, everything was going higher, and there was times, oh gosh, if I had just what a farm back in the 40s or the 50s, and you know, after the Depression, or during the Depression, I know of several people that had $500 in their pocket, or said they had, and somebody else lost their farm, and all they had to do was put $500 down on 300 acres and start farming it. And they'd tell afterwards how they wished they'd have done that. And I always thought the same thing. Why, gosh, I could have bought an F-30 tractor and a few other things, and used it and rented a lot of ground, or bought a lot of ground for a little or nothing, if I just had a little money.
Yeah.
And then as you get that money, the land went up faster than it was coming in.
Yeah. Well, unless either one of you have anything else you'd like to add to this story, the Linn County Historical Center, the Cedar Rapids History Center, would like to thank you very much for sharing your memories with us. This is the homestead of Jeremiah Burge, which was constructed in 1846 on the old military road between Iowa City and Dubuque. And is still in the Burge name 168 years later.